Well, thank you everyone for attending. Today's event is our talent toolbox, and we're specifically going to be doing a proposal deep dive today. Now, these events are curated in tandem with our Upwork coaches here, joined by the lovely Tiffany Ford here. And what we're doing in these is taking a look at attendee like yours, proposals, profiles, things of that nature, and reviewing them here in a public way that we can go ahead and see what's working, what isn't, and do a bit of crowdsourcing for thoughts and opinions, okay? So I'm actually going to shoot a link into the chat section here. This is where you can actually register to have your profile and your proposal, something like that, dissected in one of these events. So feel free to fill in that form. I'll link it again later in our presentation, okay? But we're going to go ahead and dive in here. Now, note that all the tips that we're going to be discussing here are a collection of best practices and optional. And at the end of the day, you have to decide what will work best for your business. But these are tips and tricks that we found are pretty universal and applicable. Okay, so I think I've already introduced Tiffany Ford, but Tiffany is from our Upwork coaches team, and she regularly does individual and small group coaching on how to excel in this sort of space. Thank you for joining us today, Tiffany.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. Excited to see what kind of questions we have and talk about the proposals that we've got to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and a little bit of housekeeping as we get started. If you have any questions that you'd like to discuss, whether in the Q&A section or live, drop them in the question and answer section, not the chat window. The chat window moves real quick and it's hard for me to track that. Okay, so feel free to drop them in the question and answer, and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, and this webinar is being recorded, and there will be a recording of it available on the community events page, which I'll go ahead and link to at the end of the presentation as well. All right, so what we're going to be covering today is some proposal best practices. We're going to review a couple of submissions from attendees such as yourself, and then we're going to go into a Q&A session. We've got quite a few things to cover, so we'll go ahead and dive right in. I want to start us off with a little bit of a warm-up question here. What is one of the top factors that you think clients look for in a proposal? Go ahead and drop that in the chat section here. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I always love hearing what people think here.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the top? Authenticity, that's a good one. Experience, absolutely. The rate, definitely important. Customized proposal, yes, that's what we like to see, huh, Tiffany? none of that copy and paste.
Absolutely.
Never works.
No, number one.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay, so yeah, getting a lot of common themes here. Good proposal, free service, no way. Fantastic. Well, Tiffany, why don't you go ahead and give us from your perspective, what are some of the best ways that independent professionals can stand out from the crowd when they're submitting these proposals?
Yeah, so clients get a lot of proposals, but I think the number one thing is people always think they're read in the order that they're received, which we know isn't true. So you should always be writing your proposal, kind of putting your best foot forward. And I think the number one thing to start with is if you can find the client's name, start with that. Sometimes they put it in the job post. Sometimes you can go look at their feedback and see where other people have written their name in the feedback. And so, hey, if you can start that out with like, hi, John, good to meet you. If you can't find their name, that's okay. Use a professional greeting. But, when we see our names, our eyes are immediately drawn to it. And so that's kind of number one, if you can find that to help you stand out. Someone said kind of customization, really looking at that job post, picking out some key terms, key skills, what are they looking for, so that when they read your proposal, they know you read their job post. And it's not just a copy and paste like form letter that makes the client feel like you didn't really think about them.
Yeah.
And then I think the last one is when you're wrapping up, always just make sure that you're kind of closing that deal and saying, this is when I'm available to talk. I would love to chat either in the message room. Let's set up a Zoom. Here's when I'm available. Using that calendar tool to even set that up and make that a little easier, but kind of, if I'm the client, I want to know, how can I talk with you as fast as possible? So make that easy. So that's my top three.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one. One of the first ones you said is sort of proof that you read the actual posting itself. I find that the most successful proposals that I've been able to put out there I'm also a graphic design freelancer, for those that don't know. But I find the most successful ones are the ones where I've actually taken a moment to dissect who am I talking to before I write the proposal? How are they phrasing their questions? What are their questions? What are their tags? What can I glean from the client on the listing before I ever start putting any keystrokes down? So very, very important there. So
Absolutely.
let's take a look at interesting stats. Do you want to walk us through what we're looking at here, Tiffany?
Yeah, so this is a tool that our Upwork coaches have access to that helps us kind of guide the talent that we are assisting with their rate and bidding strategy. And so really what these graphs are telling us is when you write a proposal and you make that bid on the job, now these are all hourly bids, but that shows up for us as the blue line. And then when that job closes and that client has awarded that job to someone, that shows up in the green line. Now you can see that top graph, the green line is always above the blue line, which means for every job that this person wrote a proposal for, they were underbidding. The client actually awarded that job, in some cases, a significantly higher amount, like instead of $20 an hour, $100 an hour.
Wow.
And that is typically what we see, is that talent kind of undersell themselves when it comes to pricing. And so I know a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm constantly chasing that bottom dollar, but clients actually want to pay more for quality people. Yeah. So that middle graph, we're kind of getting better, right? Sometimes that green bar is higher than the blue. Sometimes it's lower, but you want to get as close to parity, right, as possible. So that bottom graph is really ideal, where you can see that, most of the time this person is bidding very close to where the job is actually awarded. Sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're lower, and that's okay. We're never going to be perfect, but you want to be in alignment with client expectations. And that's what that graph is telling me when I see that. So for most people, you're that top graph. You are desperately bidding too low. And sometimes people are like, why am I not getting hired? And it's because clients kind of think that maybe you're offering too low of a price because you're maybe not going to give them quality work. And that's not the impression that you want to give. So sometimes just raising your rates, which seems a little unintuitive, actually gets better results.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I struggle with this a lot personally in my own experience. Just recently, I got a full workload, and then I was taking on a new web project, and I'm like, you know what? I got a full workload. Let me throw out a crazy number that they're going to say no to. And the client said, "Great, sounds good. Can we start tomorrow?" And I'm like, I should have been charging this the whole time. What am I doing?
Yeah, it's a weird feeling the first time you do it. I know you get nervous, but it's at the end of the day, if they say yes, then you've won. And if not, you learned something.
Absolutely. And half the time, if it's a no, it's not an end of conversation no. It's a let's talk about why, justify why I want to pay that, or here's why I'd like it to be lower. So either way, it usually leads to a conversation. All right, so let's go into our first job posting here. So this one, hopefully you can all see up on the screen here. Here is a job posting where a graphic designer needed to create multiple infographics for case studies. So it looks like multiple assets here, specific to social media with your usual suspects with LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, those sorts of things. I notice here that this is for a mental health startup. Excuse me. So we know that they're in the medical field, which there are certain attributes that we can put towards that. It looks like they have an existing brand guideline, which is fantastic, really helps. They're giving us a lot of detail here that I like. And I also see that they're looking for an experience level. Yeah, intermediate experience level, pretty good hourly range. So this looks like a good, clean posting. What are your thoughts, Tiffany? Are there any other sort of things that jump out at you on this one that you'd want people to lock onto?
No, I really like this one for all the reasons that you said. They give a lot of good information about who they need, what they need them for, kind of what they've already developed, the existing brand guidelines, colors, fonts, shapes. Coming into this as a graphics designer, you probably know sometimes the question is, do I need to develop these things or do you already have them? So knowing that up front kind of already brings that into focus. So yeah, it's not a ton of information, but I think for the job, it's, gives me enough to go on to write a proposal.
Yep. There's one thing too that I just noticed when I'm looking at it here in the skills and expertise tags. I think we can learn a little bit also about the experience level or knowledge knowledge level of the client on graphic design. They don't mention any design programs, no Photoshop, no InDesign, no Illustrator. So while their tags are good and clean on what they're looking for, they may not be as familiar with the process of that creation. So good to know when we're making that proposal, what level of granularity perhaps we need. So let's take a look at what was submitted. So let's take a minute to read through this. Jacksonville, Florida, graphic designer, 18 years of experience, looking to help with the assets and convey your message, consistent brand. It's good opening there. I really like that.
This is a great proposal. Really, before I even read it, visually, this is a great proposal. So
Right.
sometimes when we write proposals, we have a lot of things that we want to say, and we jam it all into one giant paragraph that looks very unattractive to the eye. And when I am a client looking at a lot of proposals and I see just a big old paragraph, I may not read it if I feel like I don't have enough time. So breaking them into smaller pieces, maybe even using bulleted lists if you need to call out key pieces of information. I like the good morning from Jacksonville, Florida. If you can't find the client's name, use something to really, catch their attention. But yeah, overall, this is kind of ideal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it looks like the one thing that they do have, which is probably against the terms of service or whatnot we want, is it looks like they have their portfolio listed there at the www.blankedout.net. So it's probably, we want to keep the profile and things internal to Upwork, and that way, so we're staying within the terms of service. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a gray area for people to work in. They're sometimes uncertain about how this process, needs to work, because maybe you do have, like in this case, like a Behance or something like that, where you want to link the client to a portfolio. The only time that's going to be okay is if that portfolio, when they get to that website, does not have your contact information, a contact me form, a phone number, anything like that. Simply because that terms of service says that we have to keep that communication on Upwork until that contract is in place. So you can link to a portfolio if it's just some images, some templates, some wireframes, whatever is applicable for you, if there's no way to contact you when they get to that page. But in this case, there probably is. And yeah, we definitely don't want to put our accounts at risk violating some terms of service if that's the case. So it's just not worth the risk. Generally, if you can go take that information off, then you're good.
Yeah. I do like how they walk through their sort of the way that they accomplish this. They work for several social media accounts. They have they have a podiatric dentist. That's good. Referencing a client that works in the same sort of medical space, very advantageous. It's fantastic. Yeah, you're right. The layout of this is clean. Are there any critical aspects outside of the linking that you would suggest to take this to the next level?
I talked about kind of closing that proposal with an invitation to set up a meeting or letting them know when you're available to speak. This one doesn't do that. And I think that would be kind of a way that you could improve this particular proposal, is maybe just wrapping that up with, I'm available on these hours, this time zone, or I have my calendar connected, use that to make a meeting with me. I'd love to talk with you. And sometimes projects don't necessarily need an interview, but even if they just know that you're available in the chat during a particular time and that you could hop on and talk with them, that's enough to kind of catch their interest and say, I'm looking to hire, let's talk with you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I also like, what do you think about this, the voice in how this is written? I think it's a pretty good sort of personable yet professional. The word choice and just the sentence structure comes across to me pretty polished. How about you?
Yeah, there's no typos, there's no real like grammatical errors. Everything is very kind of well written and concise. This person, they talk about their background, they provide some samples, they describe their experience, and they don't go on and on. It's got everything you want without being too wordy. And, like I said, generally this feels pretty ideal.
Yeah. Perfect. We have some good questions here. I want to pause to address one of these questions. It was, I think, based on that graph we were talking about. So how can you gauge your skills, how much your skills are worth, so you're not under or overselling yourself? This is a fantastic question. And I think a lot of it bleeds over into a topic of imposter syndrome sometimes, where we're like, oh, I shouldn't be bidding as much. Let me share with you one of the ways that I get a gauge on what I should be bidding. on the talent side of Upwork, the independent professional side, I will actually go and look at other independent professionals in my area. So I will look at graphic designers who are 5-star rated, 100% JSS, your job success score, excellent client feedback and good earnings. And I'll take a look at these people and I'll say, can I do what they're doing? I'll look at their portfolio item. Can I do that? No. Okay. Can I do that? Yes, I can do that. Can I do it as well as them? Maybe. Okay. Then if clients are willing to pay them X amount of dollars, which you can usually see for X product, and you can do that, that's a pretty accurate gauge of what the market will bear. So I typically go about it looking at what my peer group is doing and those that are better than me, what are they doing? And I try and seek that. Is that sort of some good advice, Tiffany? Any other suggestions you'd have?
Yeah, that's absolutely what I would do, is go out and see what other talent in your particular job category are charging. You can do that in a number of different ways, kind of looking at comparable talent, maybe even shooting for and looking at top talent to say, hey, I want to reach that top rated and that top rated plus status. So what are they charging? But really making sure that you are making an accurate comparison. In this case, this person has 18 years of experience. So we could go look and see what are they actually charging. But if you only have 4 years of experience, then maybe that's not such a great comparison. But, going back to sometimes you just have to try things. Generally, I think if you want to just start making proposals and raising your rates to just kind of see what that response feels like, there's not going to be any harm in backing back off that later if you feel like you're just not getting the response that you should be getting. And, no one can see, client wise, other talent, what you're bidding on other proposals, like specifically. So no one's going to come back and say, why did you bid $40 an hour on this one? Or why did you bid $60 an hour on this one? No one can see that. So once you start winning work, those rates show up on your profile. And at that point, if you've locked yourself into a low rate and clients come to your profile and they see, well, you've just done a whole bunch of jobs for $15 an hour. If you need to raise your rates at that point, it actually becomes more difficult to say, well, now I'm worth 30 or 40. So it's better to actually raise those rates as quickly as you can so that you don't build up a reputation as being cheap. So yeah.
That's an interesting and very valid viewpoint. Yeah, you're absolutely right. If people see that everyone's been getting the same job from you for $20 and now you're trying to charge me 50, I'll be like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. And
Good
again,
point.
Clients equating price with quality, kind of that you get what you pay for mentality. If you are charging too little, they're going to maybe feel like you're not going to provide them with as good of a service or quality product as someone who's charging more.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So let's check out the next job posting here. So the next one is looks like another graphic design sort of industry one. We have for logo and brand design. Looking for creative to potentially be part of many future projects. Okay, so multiple projects here. Needing logo, brand design for the company focused on helping others learn and grow. The Reset Factory. So it sounds like perhaps in the educational space. Looks like maybe a startup project. I'm guessing just based upon the fact that not a lot of specification or any branding guidelines yet, and just a unclear amount of deliverables, which, from my perspective, I always like to find out, what is the scope of the entire project before we begin. So something that catches my attention there.
Yeah. And I think I would even try maybe Googling the Reset Factory to see if I could gather some more information, anything I can pull out of a job post, especially when it's this vague, to kind of help me understand a little bit more about the client, maybe their needs. I would try to do that kind of research because they're really not giving me a lot to work with in this particular job post.
Yeah, that's true. Not a whole lot to go with. So it's a vague scope of work, educational. We got the web design, logo design, graphics. So it's all over the place in regards to its tags as well.
Yeah. And I like this one though, because it's kind of typical. Sometimes we get clients who come to the platform, they're not, they're new. They're not as well versed in how Upwork really works. So when they write a job post like this, in fact, I would probably say this is maybe a brand new client. It looks like this. They haven't really figured out how to communicate their needs. They haven't built out a scope. They don't really know how to talk to the talent. And so you end up with 2-sentence job posts. And so we have to sometimes write proposals to these kinds of job posts. I'm not saying this isn't a serious client. They just aren't quite sure how the system works yet.
Right. And that's very common for a lot of people that are hiring on the platform. They're coming to the platform because they're looking for the expert, not because they are the expert in whatever they're looking for. So this, I'd say, is a pretty common scenario, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is very typical.
And guys, I altered the chat setting here. We're getting a lot of people just doing some crosstalk. So to keep things a little bit simpler for attendees, I made it so that you can only chat to us up here, not each other, just to limit that. I'm also going to post in here, if you'd like us to review proposals, profiles, anything like that, here is the link where you can go ahead and do that. So instead of linking in the chat, feel free to fill that out while we're reviewing these, all right? And if you do have a question, please drop it in the question and answer section. It's very, very much easier for me to track and get to, all right? Thank you so much. So let's look at the proposal that was submitted for this. Okay, we got quite a bit of reading here. Okay, so my without having read any of the content, my initial feeling is that it's a bit much when I'm receiving it. Are you getting that too, Tiffany?
Yeah, so this is a good example of what I was talking about previously, where you open that proposal and it's just words. It is a very big block of paragraph that if this is maybe the 20th proposal I'm reviewing today, I'm tired. And so there are some good things in here, but
Yeah.
formatting wise, this needs some work.
Yeah, I'm looking at specifically on the second paragraph at the beginning. The catalog of work includes projects such as, and they list off a few things that could easily become some bulleted items that would really help with the layout, break up the text a little bit. You know, obviously we want to be considering the client when they're posting this job. How many proposals did they receive, and how many of them are they going to read an entire novel? So the easier we can make it for them to digest the information that we need them to, the better off we're going to be, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you want to, catch the eye, draw them in, and then once you've got their attention, actually say something worthwhile so that they understand that you are a qualified person that they want to have a further conversation with. If you're just saying things that aren't really important to the client, then you're just doing yourself a disservice. You're not going to get anywhere with just, kind of meaningless statements that don't really speak to what the client is looking for.
Yeah. Now, I do see that there's some really good snippets in here where they're talking about how they do their projects, like starting with a conversation, create a few ideas to review. If you're happy, then we'll hunt it in. So that they're sort of taking the client down a trail of how is this process going to go, which, as we mentioned on the previous slide with the job posting, that's great considering that person that posted it is probably relatively new to the platform and or these types of projects. So that's a little bit of hand holding. Do you think that's the right level of hand holding and process outline?
Yeah, considering this client is probably new, maybe they've never hired, a freelancer before on any platform, it can be a very scary process from the client side as well. They want to make sure that they're hiring someone who's going to provide them with a good outcome, that isn't just going to take their money, that's going to really think about and consider them as a partner in whatever they're trying to do. So yeah, I think helping the client understand, like, what is the process of working with you? What are your steps, or kind of how do you approach their work? And I think that goes back to, you've read their job post. So this helps them kind of see, how would you work together? What would be those next steps? And what did you learn from their job post about what is needed from the client? Again, they didn't give us a lot. So the fact that the proposal is like 3 times more than the job post is a little much, but like I said, there are some good things. You're right. Like calling out the 20 years of experience, calling out previous projects, talking about how they work together, providing those samples. Formatting wise, this just needs some assistance.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's a question that came in that just seemed very topical, so I wanted to bring it up here. For the basic account, you can't view the bid range. How do you bid within the right amount? This is I speak about this in some of my other events that I do. The connects portion of the upgraded Upwork membership is lovely. It's nice to have connects that roll over. But the thing that really does it for me is you see the bid range, you see the high, the low, and the average. So, if you're coming in at the very top, then you need to be adding some value or just supporting why. Now, if if you can see that range, is it still advisable to try and be on the low side or the high side? Where would you stand on that, Tiffany?
You know, sometimes it feels like everyone's trying to match to some kind of ideal, but they're not sure what that ideal is. But honestly, you want to charge what is necessary for your business, based on your skills, your experience, and what you need to get paid for the work. You're not going to win every job. That's just simply the long and short of it. You may not fit in the client's idea of a budget. You may not fit in their idea of who they want to work with, but you also don't want to take jobs doing work that's paid too low, because then you're just going to create not a good experience for yourself, right? You're just going to start to resent the work if you're not getting paid enough. And it then, going back to, it becomes harder to raise your rates later.
Yeah.
And most of you are here for a reason. You're here to make that extra side money. You're here to try to be full-time and support your families and meet your goals. And if you're not making the money that you need to make, then you're never going to meet those goals. So I think that's where it has to start. You kind of need to walk from where do you need to be to how much am I actually needing to charge? And then that's what you bid. And if you don't win the job, then that wasn't the right project for you.
Absolutely. I fell into that trap when I first started freelancing, and I was like, oh, I just want to win a job. Doesn't matter what the job is. Doesn't matter how much they're paying me. I just want to win the job. And I think a lot of people on here, judging by the chat that's blown up, I think feel the same sort of way. But what I've realized as I've evolved my my positioning is I think about, which client do I want to work with? Is it the one that's trying to nickel and dime me and get a budget job and then is not happy with the results? Or is it someone that is happy to pay the money to give me the time to do a fantastic job so I get those 5-star reviews, my job success score stays up? I pick my clients now. And I'll tell you what, I thought it was going to be a lot harder of a transition, but it's been pretty easy. There's a lot of clients out there, So I stopped aiming at those lower jobs. And not that there's plenty of value in those jobs, different jobs for different people. But instead of just competing to hit the bottom price as quick as possible, I instead started to just target specifically the clients that I felt I would gel with and the projects that I thought that I'd be productive on.
Yeah.
So, and that's really helped.
And that goes back to, clients who will pay you well for your expertise are also the great clients you want to work with. They're not going to be a headache and try to, get free work and do all the kinds of things that we typically don't enjoy as talent on the platform. So yeah, you want to work with good people. They want to work with good people. That's how you do it.
Fantastic. All right, I think we have one more job posting before we go to the Q&A. We're right on track for timing. It's fantastic. Sorry, were there any last notes on this one before I moved on? We talked about how it could be evolved and how it's presented, but a good outline of the process. We talked about the call to action. That was a good one. Was there anything else we wanted to mention on this before we move on?
No, I think, they've attached some samples. I think just cleaning the formatting up on this one would go a long way, and then would probably get some really good client response.
Yeah. It's funny, I always like to look at the attachment names, and then you'll oftentimes see people do like name and then final 1 and final 2. We all fall in that trap where you're like, I thought that was the last draft. All right, let's take a look at the next job posting here. All right. Is that BI or is it BI? I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, Power BI.
Okay. Power BI dashboard, someone who's expert on Power BI dashboard, data visualization, data modeling analyst. All right, we've got slim pickings on details here.
Where are my data analysts at? Because everyone has seen this job post.
Yeah, it looks at a huge range on the hourly rate. It seems like this is a wide open thing. I'm looking at this. Okay, skill tags here, data visualization, data. Okay, so decent skill tags. That's I would say probably the most comprehensive part of this posting here. But this probably looks very familiar to a lot of people. I know that I see a lot of postings that are one sentence or even need graphic designer is my favorite. I'm like, and what would you like to do with said graphic designer? So what do you pull from this, Tiffany? What can we learn when we're finding these types of postings? What can we take away from it?
Yeah. And so this is, and I know that there are some job categories that are super prone to this, but this is very much what you get in the data visualization and data analysis category. And I don't know what it is about those clients who come into the platform and they're like, this is what I need. And that's all it says. And You don't get a lot more than that sometimes, and the very wild hourly range. That seems to be typical too. It's a clear sign of, I have no idea what I want to charge. I have no idea what this work costs. Someone help me. And that's very much when you talk with these kinds of clients, that is the feeling that you get. They have a problem, right? They have something they need solved, and they need you and your expertise to do it. And they just want to give you this and get out of your way because they have way too many other things, chewing up their time and taking up their brain time. And this is way over their head, and they just don't even know what to do with it. And so this is, I'm not going to say a red flag in terms of don't apply, but it's a red flag in terms of the client is screaming help.
Yeah, you should know going into it that this client will likely take a lot more hand holding than someone that did a more detailed one, which is fine. There's actually a really good comment posted in the chat from Morgan. And they say, don't shy away from one-liner posts. My largest contract, 150,000, came from a one-liner post. That's a big contract. I'm not working on contracts that big. That's fantastic. But just goes to show, just because the posting may be brief or gruff or whatever, that's actually just more information about the client that you can glean. And in that sort of scenario, you have this fantastic opportunity to become their trusted expert and owner of this domain, which would likely lead to more ongoing work if it's in a segment that has that type of thing. But very good point. Thank you for sharing that, Morgan, as well. All right, so let's take a look at what the proposal was for this. All right. Oh, nice layout. I like that. Pretty good. What else do we have? I
covered the links on this one because there's some YouTube links and some other things in there that we just didn't want to attract outside attention to, as well as, a couple of links at the bottom that had some usernames and things in them. So we're trying to keep some things anonymous, but.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So break this down for us. What are we seeing? What's working and what's not working here?
Yeah. So, this is most likely not an opportunity to find the client's name, but I think we could maybe do a little better than hi when it comes to a professional greeting. But hey, hi is hi.
So give me an example of what you mean by professional greeting then, just for those that are never going to ask that follow-up question here. What is an example of when you don't know the name?
Some people say like, hello, hiring manager or something like that, which feels a little more on the traditional side, not so much on the freelancing side, but to whom it may concern, hello, Mr. or Mrs. Greetings from Jacksonville, Florida is another great one.
Something more than hi.
Yeah, okay. Something more than hi, but this is all right. They start out talking about their experience, in the area that the client is looking for, what they're good at. I think saying that up front, like, these are the types of projects I'm good at. Here's where my skill set lies or my strengths lie. That's great to start with. So the client immediately knows, hey, I'm a good fit for this job is really what you're saying. They provide some samples. Now, the links that they provided, they're YouTube links, which I have no objection to the YouTube links, especially when it comes to this kind of category where you're needing to show off like this data visualization. The videos that they provided actually show some of the work that they've done for previous clients with a little bit of narration. So they're talking about, this is the project, here's what the client gave me, here's what they needed, and here's what I provided. And it's like a vocal case study. And I thought that was a great idea for many different categories where maybe the work isn't as visual or as appealing. Graphics designers kind of get to throw out all kinds of good portfolios, but in data analysts and data visualization, sometimes it's not nearly as fun to look at.
Yeah.
He talks about his skills as an Oracle certified DPA relevant to the requirements. Okay. We can discuss over chat. He doesn't really give me more information about when that could happen, but that's a start. Now, I would ding him on those links at the bottom. That's a no-no, right? We definitely cannot promote ourselves through other competitors, right? Freelancer.com being an Upwork competitor, that's a no-no. And then having that LinkedIn, again, we talked about that terms of service, not allowing that. So those two would actually maybe put your account at risk, so not worth it at all. So if we'd ended with the regards, I would say this is a pretty great proposal.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Good information there. And the reason why the LinkedIn one specifically is on the no list for linking is because it is a method of communication external to Upwork, right?
Right.
So it'd be
Yeah.
technically against the terms of service. Okay, cool. Just making sure everyone's on the same page here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, that goes back to safety. Most of the time, sometimes it's just that clients don't understand the rules and the terms of service, right? They're brand new. But other times, and I would say most of the time, if the client is trying to take you off the platform, they want to work through WhatsApp or whatever, they're trying to scam you. That's generally what we find. They're trying to drag you off the platform to get free work and never pay you. And that's, so it is about safety. We're not trying to find ways to make your communications with clients more difficult. We're not trying to find ways to, kind of stymie that communication avenue by not letting you share your LinkedIn and things like that. Once that contract is underway, you can work on whatever platform you want. Some places go to Slack, some go to Skype, some integrate you in with their network. If they're a corporation, maybe they're having you, on their whatever platform they're using internally. All of that is great once the contract is in place. So yeah, just make sure you're paying attention to those kinds of things, because it really is about safety. We want to keep the talent safe on the platform, and keeping them on the platform is really the only way that we can have a chance of doing that.
Absolutely. So before we jump into the Q&A section here, I wanted to give us a chance for Tiffany's top tips. So you're going to walk us through some of these?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that top one there, we talk about how clients come to the platform and they have a problem, right? They need something done. They have some urgent project. They have, something that just they can't take on themselves, or maybe they just don't even have time to take on themselves. And they desperately need your expertise and to take it off of their hands. And so when you are responding to those proposals and talking to clients, right, talk about how you're going to give that value. Don't just talk about yourself. I'm a this and I did that and I'm this, and right, the proposal just is I, which is fine in a very small amount, but also talk about the client. Look at that job post, put yourself in their shoes, think about other clients you've worked with and how you helped them. Describe how you're going to basically solve the problem that's burning for them and why they're on Upwork in the first place. So whether that's, talking about that approach to the project, your key experience, what makes you well suited. Most clients tell us that they just really want to find someone who treats their business interests like their own and wants to be a partner in the endeavor. And so if you can communicate that in the proposal, you will get a lot of response.
Fantastic.
So the next one, that opener of the proposal after that awesome greeting really should feel like a pitch. Just a few sentences that you can start with that talks about skills, years of experience, whatever is kind of relevant for you. Is that past experience, clients you've worked with, projects you've done, education, what is going to be important to this client, and then talk about that, right? Push that button for them so that they can, connect those dots. This person is who I want to talk with. So just a couple of sentences, just throw that right there at the beginning of the proposal. And we saw that in several of the proposals. When you look at that kind of opener, that's what they're doing. They're writing that little pitch. Then that third one, I think we talked about, right? Clients tend to skim. They get a lot of proposals. And so think about how your proposal looks to fresh eyes, maybe fresh, tired eyes. And are you presenting the information in the way that is really the best way? So make sure that key information is either up top or it's in bulleted lists to catch their attention. Don't write big, giant paragraphs that they can't really skim through and get what they need. And, if that means that you say less, well, then less can be more. Yeah, definitely. If they see that big paragraph and never read it, then you didn't say anything, right?
Absolutely.
And then the last one about the copy and pasted proposals, that's, we say that's the number one no. Clients who feel like you did not read their job post, that you're just copying and pasting the same proposal over and over, it's the number one thing that just shuts them off. And so it's okay to have kind of a template that you want to follow. Maybe it contains some kind of greeting if you can't find their name. It contains that pitch. Then the middle section is what you fill out related to their job post. And then, that ending statement, this is when we can meet, this is when I'm available, but at least making it feel like you're talking to them and you're not just spamming their proposal inbox with the same copy and pasted thing. And so that's definitely what clients want to see.
Absolutely. That was a good point brought up by Lowell in the chat while we were going through that. And they're speaking about using empathy in the proposals. They say that this is a type of acknowledgement was a turning point for getting clients to respond to their proposals. It's a fantastic point, and actually a very valid sales technique too, is sort of cushioning the experience, being like, I know that creating a website can be a stressful experience or whatever the case may be, but getting in the shoes of the client and empathizing with their experience or the scope of the project or whatever, it's a very good technique. Do you find that to be pretty consistently effective as well?
Yeah, that empathy, I think, goes hand in hand with, when I talk about clients having kind of burning pains, right? They need someone to help them. They're looking for someone with that professional experience to just take that and do a great job. And, I've hired on the client side as well. And I know that's what I'm looking for too. Sometimes they're jobs I could do, but I just simply don't have the time, or I could do it, but I know I couldn't do it as well as someone who does this on a more regular basis. And it's certainly going to be faster if they do it. So hiring someone to kind of take that off your plate, and then finding that person that you just feel relieved when you hire them, you just know they're going to do a great job. You're going to get a great outcome. And that it's such a relief. And so, yeah, that empathy, I 100% agree that if you can communicate that and actually talk with your clients in that kind of partnership way, and communicate how you're trying to help them, then you will definitely start to get more response.
Absolutely. There's another good question here that came up. The question is, how do you win a project when you have a lot of experience external to Upwork, but you're new to Upwork? They're saying that it seems like the clients consider that it may be some sort of scam where, like, you don't have any stars or any review, but your work's real sharp. Those two don't match. So what would you suggest for people that are in that situation? How best to either explain that gap or how best to present themselves?
Yeah. So if you can get testimonials from past companies and clients, maybe that you've worked with, if you're coming from industry, maybe you have a coworker or someone who would kind of endorse you through that testimonial tool on your profile. And that also helps kind of fill in those gaps. If you could reach out to that person, they write you a great testimony about how you worked together at such and such job and did this work together. That goes a long way. But I think just explaining, hey, I've spent 10 years in the industry working for these types of companies. I did this kind of work for these types of clients. You can find those samples in my portfolio. It's okay to say that you're new to Upwork. We get new people in the door every day, and it doesn't stop them from being successful. You just have to help those clients connect the dots of, hey, I came from, this company and now I'm trying to freelance, or maybe I'm just freelancing on the side and, I'm only working for or looking for short-term projects or, 10, 15 hours a week because I'm still working my full-time job. It's okay to explain that. It's okay to be candid with clients and help them understand where you're coming from. That's certainly better than not providing that information and then they feel like something's missing.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we get over to the Q&A section proper, I want to ask a question to everyone here. Feel free to type this in the chat. What is the one thing that you're going to try next in your next proposal submission, based on sort of what we've been talking about here? Seeing a lot of people seeing the light bulb moment come on from some of the things we've been talking about. But feel free to go ahead and pop it in the chat here while we find some good juicy questions to dig into. Bidding much higher. Yes, Elaine, love to hear it. I'll tell you what, it was the most counterintuitive thing I've done, but it's been the most successful and rewarding thing I've done as well. And now I make it a point every quarter, I challenge myself. I'm like, if I haven't raised my prices in a quarter, come on, Will, either I need to get better or I need to have more faith in myself and just try it. Proper greetings, absolutely. Shorter pitch, yes. And you know what? As a caveat to that shorter pitch learning, there are some jobs, typically the ones more technical in nature, where you can't really get that brief. Sometimes it requires a bit more of an explanation. So if we're getting to the point where you do have to write a lot of things, at least make sure you break up the text and present it well. Because if you have to read a book, at least make it a nice book.
Yeah, and I think some of that really has to do with the job category that you're making the proposal in. Some clients for some categories really do want a lot of information to help them see, especially if as you get into larger projects. If this is a $10,000 or $15,000 long-term engagement, the proposal may warrant being a little longer, especially if they have specific questions and things they want you to address. As clients get a little more familiar and savvy with the platform, they'll start to become, more specific on what they want to see in proposals, just for their own sake, of how am I going to review these and how am I going to find the right person? They'll start to get better at that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great question here from Nicholas. Is it okay to ask questions in the proposals? I'm going to say with my personal preference, I always, every single time put at least one question in my proposal, because from my experience, it's a sales technique. Humans are wired to respond to a question. If I say, how are you doing? Even if you're having a real bad day, you're probably still going to respond, So for me, I find it a great leveraging tool to start dialogue. What do you think, Tiffany? Should we be leveraging questions in our proposals?
Yeah, especially if you're getting those job posts that are kind of vague or are leaving things kind of open and you're not sure. Starting that dialogue and asking those questions not only shows that you read the job post, also leans into, I know what I'm talking about, but also starts that conversation of, okay, well, what is it that you really need my help with and how can I help you? And so, yeah, I agree. We are wired to answer a question. And so that does sometimes help kind of kick things off, especially if it's a very engaging question, maybe something that they hadn't even thought of. And they're really like, oh gosh, this person really does know what they're talking about. And maybe I should start a conversation with them because they're going to help me. They're helping me right now by thinking about these things. So yeah, I think there's a line. Too many questions kind of just looks a little.
And relevant, not what's your favorite color. That's not going to win you any friends. I mean, maybe a few friends, but probably in the very low grades.
Yeah. Relevant questions that really speak to the client's project and their needs. Maybe just 2 or 3, depending on the job, like not too many questions, really. Yeah. And make sure they're really targeted.
Yeah, and perhaps what I try to do is illustrate knowledge on the subject matter in my questions. Like, for instance, on the logo creation, I'll be like, are there any examples of logos that you have that you've seen that you like? I will, I typically make these files in Adobe Illustrator so that you have the source vector file. Does that sound good to you? What other file formats would you like them in? Where are you going to use them? Understanding that it's not just creating a logo. The client is, what are they going to do with the thing that I create? And asking questions around that sort of shows that I can manage the whole project. Sorry, let's see here. Let's get to a couple of these questions. Thomas, great question. For the call to action to have someone schedule a meeting, do most freelancers charge for the sort of interview consultation, or is it a free consultation? It's a good question.
I think it depends, because there is definitely a difference between an interview and a consultation. So, if I've applied to a job and I wrote a proposal, the client responds to that proposal, and we set up a time to talk, that's a free interview. Now, we may talk for an hour and I don't get paid for that hour, but maybe I learn something about my own interview skills in the process. Even if they don't choose me, I learn and practice how to talk with clients, and that only improves me and my freelancing business. But hopefully we do have a great conversation. They do choose to hire me, and then it's just time well spent. That's an hour of investment that you've just basically made to your own business and building that relationship with the client. Now, if it's an actual consultation, which, we have the new consultation tool, you can put that on your profile and offer those to clients where they can just come to you directly and say, hey, I want a consultation. Some job categories that lends itself to way more than others. But that's just kind of a way for clients to reach out to a professional and say, maybe they're even at that stage of like, I don't even know how to write this job post. I don't even know what I need. Let's talk for an hour. I'll pay you your consultation fee. You talk to me about what I'm doing. What kind of person do I need? Are you the right person? And that way I can really kind of put together a reasonable request. And so I've had those kinds of conversations with clients before where they, are not at the phase where they're ready to hire someone, or they're not, the idea is not developed, or they're trying to find the wrong person. I see this a lot. I work in instructional design. People think we're somehow designers, like graphical designers. And that's not how it works. And so you talk with people sometimes and they realize, oh, I'm fishing in the entirely wrong place for the kind of talent that I need. And
Right.
so, sometimes you have those conversations, but
Absolutely.
yeah, I think there's definitely a difference between those two conversations and how they're approached.
Got it. And there's a good question here from Janine, coming back to the topic of sort of intro lines. If you don't have the client's name, there's two different intro lines that she's using. I think she usually uses, "Hi, my name is Janine, and I'm a strong candidate for your, fill in the blank position," which is a decent start there. And she's asking if, "Dear potential client," is that a better intro? Is that a little bit too informal? What's your feeling on this?
I don't mind, dear potential client. I think that sounds fine.
Yeah, cool. And maybe a little bit more formal.
Yeah, it's always so difficult to tell because some people are, wanting more formal kind of business relationships. Some people come to Upwork and they're just, they're laid back and they're just looking for someone to take this one-off job. And so sometimes it's hard to tell kind of where they fall on that professionalism spectrum. Sometimes
Right.
you can kind of glean that information from the way that they write in the job post.
Right. Called mirroring, right? That technique.
Right. And it is, generally in business, we say that it's better to lean towards formality than informality because you'll never really offend with formality where you could with informality. So
that is a very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to find that line. I know, especially when you're first starting out in your independent professional journey, finding that voice. I know it took me a while, but and it ended up being, for me, I bring a lot of my personality into what I do. I'm a little bit goofy, but I am trustworthy, and I try and convey that, like, I'm fun to work with, but I know what I'm doing. You're in the right hands. And I found that has landed me clients that I resonate quite well with, and has led to a lot of recurring business as opposed to having to seek new clients all the time. So I have a suggestion to those many that are asking, I've been putting out proposals, not getting any responses. Have faith. It takes a minute to find your voice. It takes a minute to find how to digest the job postings and identify, is this a client that I want? So be patient with yourself, and you're attending events like this, so that's already right on the mark here. Looks like we have time for maybe one or two more questions here. Let me see. So there's some questions here about portfolio and profile. That is actually another event that we'll be doing, another deep dive from our Talent Toolbox series. So make sure you attend on that one. We're not going to dig into that topic today. We'll keep it focused if we can. But good question. So there is a recording of this that will be available. Let me actually just post that in the chat now. So all of our webinars typically get recorded, and they will be posted in this section. If you look in the chat box, I will post it there. So feel free to check that out, as well as the recording of this event. There's a recording of other fantastic webinars, dealing with core items like how to write good proposals, how to dial in your portfolio, things of that nature that are less interactive and more educational. Let's see if we can squeak in one more question here.
If not, I've got one I will talk about.
Feel free. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Because I do try to watch as things go by, somewhat quickly.
Please.
And some people have asked a little bit about how do I avoid those scammers? How do I avoid those fake jobs and things like that? And, all props to our trust and safety team who just work 24/7 to try to keep the platform safe. That is a never ending job. Because you just know there's being on the internet, there's always going to be those bad actors. So, but I do have some tips, really, especially when you're first getting started, to help you basically screen for those high quality projects. So when you're on the platform and you're looking at that job post, we can see the client's history. We can see what they've spent on Upwork, what their hire rate is, who they've hired, what they've paid, all of that. If they're brand new and they have no information, sometimes it's better off to just dodge, right? I'm not saying that all new clients are bad, because we were all new clients at one point, but when you're just getting started and you don't really have that kind of red flag antenna yet, sometimes it's best to avoid. Target those clients that have hired before, that have that history, that have that feedback, and that look like they're serious clients, and you will bypass 90% of all just bad actors on the platform. You can look for badges, right? So some of our clients have badges that indicate that they are an Upwork Plus client, so they're paying for Upwork services. They may be enterprise clients. They may have the featured jobs badge, which means that they've paid to promote their job. Typically, if people put money into Upwork, they're not here to scam the talent. I'm not saying that's always, but that's—
No, you're right. It's a good measure.
Right. Looking at, all of those key things, the number of hires versus jobs posted. If someone's posting a ton of jobs and never hire, that's kind of a red flag. If they're hiring at like an average $3 hourly rate, maybe not a great job for you. We did talk about with Freelancer Plus, you can see those bid ranges on jobs, which kind of helps you target that in a little better if that information isn't there. But when you are first getting started out, and especially when connects are a premium, right? You're trying to spend them as wisely as possible. I know that the urge is to go through that job feed and apply to every possible job that you are qualified for, but that is not a good strategy. You are going to burn connects, and you're going to run into a lot of scammers and just non-serious clients who are here to window shop. It pays to just be strategic and only choose clients that seem like a fairly good bet in terms of they're actually going to hire for this job. Later, when you are more established and you have a little more room in your life to fill out jobs that may not be as serious, because again, not all new clients are bad, but they just might not be the clients you need to be chasing right now. So that is my advice, and you will save yourself a lot of headache generally.
Absolutely. Here up on the screen, there's a couple resources. I don't. Those links are probably not clickable through these slides, but these are great search terms in the Upwork support section if you're looking to know a little bit more about them. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining on this. We really appreciate your wisdom and feedback on this. I know we had a lot of questions that went unanswered there. Feel free to continue these conversations in the community section or join us on the next event. I've dropped a few links if you'd like to have one of your profiles, portfolios, project catalog reviewed. All right. And with that, thank you so much. Have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.